2 men. Same starting point, 26 years old. Same entry-level salary of $68,000 a year. Same city, same graduation month. Marcus and Derek. Roommates in college, now standing at the same fork every 20-something hits eventually. 2 job offers land on the same day. One pays less and lets you work from anywhere. One pays more and wants you in a chair by 9 a.m. Which one actually makes you richer by the time you're 40? Most people guess wrong, and the reason they guess wrong is that nobody ever sits down and does the math on what a commute actually costs. Not the gas, the whole thing. Stick around, because the real number is not what you think, and it changes the entire decision. Marcus takes the remote offer, $58,000 a year, fully distributed team, no office to report to. Derek takes the in-office offer, $72,000 a year, a $14,000 premium at a company with a downtown headquarters and a 5-day attendance policy. On paper, Derek wins before either of them unpacks a single box. $14,000 is real money. It's a car. It's a down payment head start. Derek's parents are proud. Marcus's parents ask him gently if he's sure about this. Here's the split in exact numbers. Marcus signs for $58,000, no commute, no dress code, no relocation required. He stays in his current apartment, 20 minutes from nowhere in particular, because it doesn't matter anymore. Derek signs for $72,000 and moves into a 1-bedroom near enough to the office to keep the drive under 30 minutes, which in most mid-size American metros means a rent premium of $200 to $400 a month just for proximity. Derek also needs a reliable car for daily driving, so he finances a compact sedan rather than keeping the beater he drove in college. His first-year car payment, $310 a month, plus insurance that runs higher because now the car is rated for a daily commute instead of occasional use. For the first 6 months, Derek looks like he made the obviously smarter choice. He's got the better salary line on his resume. He's shaking hands with the VP in the break room. He's first in line for the promotion track because, frankly, he's the one people see. Marcus is invisible. Good work, quiet Slack messages. Nobody in leadership can quite picture his face in a meeting. Early on, visibility feels like it's worth more than money. Derek believes it too. He tells Marcus at Thanksgiving that remote work is a trap for people who don't want to compete. Then the first real checkpoint arrives, right around the 1-year mark, and this is where the actual math starts to show up. Derek's commute is 26 minutes each way on a good day, which the national average roughly confirms. The typical American one-way commute runs around 27 minutes, and that's before you add the day's traffic makes it 40. Round trip, that's close to 55 minutes a day, 5 days a week, 48 working weeks a year. Do the multiplication, and Derek is spending somewhere around 220 hours a year just sitting in a car going to and from a building. 220 hours is close to 28 full 8-hour workdays. Derek is working an extra month a year and getting paid nothing for it. Now put a dollar figure on that time, because time only feels abstract until you price it. At Derek's $72,000 salary, his rough hourly rate, accounting for a standard work year, lands around $35 an hour. 220 hours of unpaid commuting time, valued at his own wage, is roughly $7,700 a year. That's before a single gallon of gas gets counted. This is the number almost nobody calculates before accepting a job, and it's the first crack in the obviously better offer. Now, the actual out-of-pocket cost, the stuff that leaves Derek's checking account. Multiple independent cost studies, AAA's Annual Driving Cost Survey, Bureau of Labor Statistics, consumer expenditure data, and separate commuter cost research from firms like LendingTree converge on a range, not a single number, because it depends on distance and city. But for a moderate suburban commute like Derek's, the honest all-in figure, once you stop counting only gas and start counting depreciation, maintenance, insurance, and parking, lands between $8,500 and $11,000 a year. Gas alone is typically only 30 to 40% of that total. The rest is the stuff people forget. A car depreciates roughly $4,000 in its first year of ownership, regardless of how it's driven, and every commuting mile accelerates that clock. Split the difference and call Derek's true annual commuting cost $9,400. Cash plus depreciation combined. Stack that against his $14,000 salary premium over Marcus, and something uncomfortable happens. Over $9,000 of that premium is already gone before Derek buys groceries. He's not up $14,000 a year. He's up roughly $4,600 once you subtract commuting costs. And that's before we even touch the $7,700 time cost, which doesn't hit his bank account, but absolutely hits his life, because that's time he doesn't have for a side project, a second income stream, sleep, or his own kids someday. Here's a rule of thumb worth pausing on, because this is the part you can actually use for your own decision this week. Take any job offer's salary difference, subtract your realistic annual commuting cost. A fair starting estimate for most U.S. metro commuters is between $2,800 and $11,000 depending on distance and city. So look up your specific route's mileage and multiply by roughly 68 cents a mile, which is close to the current IRS standard mileage rate that bakes in gas, wear, and depreciation together. And then ask whether what's left over is actually worth the hours. If the leftover premium, after subtracting commuting cost, is under $5,000 a year, you are very often better off, dollar for dollar and hour for hour, taking the lower-paying remote role. That's not a guess. That's just what the arithmetic says once you stop pretending the commute is free. By year 2, the gap starts closing in ways that have nothing to do with salary lines. Marcus, without a commute eating an hour and a half of his day, starts using that reclaimed time. He picks up a handful of freelance clients in his field on evenings that used to belong to traffic. It's not dramatic. Call it $600 to $800 a month, inconsistent. Some months, nothing. But annualized, it's another $6,000 to $9,000 Marcus adds to his effective income. Money Derek structurally cannot access because his time is spoken for by a building he doesn't own. Marcus also moves somewhere cheaper. Because his job doesn't care where he lives, he relocates to a lower cost of living city 18 months in, cutting his rent by close to $400 a month. That single decision, invisible on a resume, meaningless to a hiring manager, completely unavailable to Derek, is worth roughly $4,800 a year in pure cost of living. Add it to the freelance income, and Marcus has quietly closed almost the entire salary gap, not by earning more at his job, but by restructuring the parts of life that a commute-bound job locks in place. To Derek's credit, and this matters for keeping the story honest, Derek is not making a bad choice. He gets real things Marcus doesn't. He's in the room when decisions get made, and in-office employees still get promoted at meaningfully higher rates in a lot of industries, particularly early career, because visibility genuinely correlates with advancement in traditional corporate ladders. Derek also has structure, a hard start and stop to his day, which some people need and which protects against the burnout risk of a job that never physically leaves the house. He's building an in-person professional network that will matter for the rest of his career in ways a Slack channel doesn't replicate. None of that is nothing. If Derek's industry is one where partner track or executive track promotion runs almost entirely through in-person sponsorship, law, banking, certain corporate finance tracks, his premium may be buying something Marcus's flexibility can't purchase at any price. But watch what happens as the years compound, because this is where the structural gap stops being close and starts being obvious. By year 5, Marcus has been investing the difference. Not a huge amount. Call it $400 a month? The rough sum of his lower cost of living and his freelance overflow put into a simple low-cost index fund rather than spent. At a conservative long-run average market return, $400 a month compounding for 5 years builds to somewhere around $28,000. Derek, meanwhile, has been putting his higher salary into a nicer apartment, a newer car, and the commuting costs that quietly recur every single year without ever building him anything. His 220 commuting hours a year times 5 years is 1,100 hours. Nearly 28 full work weeks of his life spent in a car permanently gone with nothing to show for it on a balance sheet. By year 10, assuming Marcus keeps that same monthly investing habit and periodically bumps it as his freelance income grows, the math tilts hard in his favor. 10 years of $400 a month, growing modestly as his side income does, realistically lands somewhere between $70,000 and $90,000 in accumulated savings and investments, money that exists, because a commute never took the time or the money to build it in the first place. Derek, over that same decade, has spent an estimated $90,000 to $100,000 cumulatively on commuting costs alone at his moderate suburban rate, and lost roughly 2,200 hours of his life to the drive, more than 3 solid months of full-time hours gone, unrecoverable, and unpaid. Here's the final side-by-side. In plain numbers, Derek earned more cumulatively on paper, roughly $140,000 more in gross salary over 10 years, thanks to that consistent $14,000 a year premium. But subtract his estimated $95,000 decade of commuting costs, and his real advantage shrinks to about $45,000. Marcus, on the other side, built somewhere around $70,000 to $90,000 in actual accumulated wealth from investing what a commute would have consumed on top of never losing those 2,200 hours. When you net it out, honestly, without rounding in either direction, the two paths land within shouting distance of each other financially. And Marcus got there with radically more control over his time, his location, and his schedule the entire way. Now, fair balance, because this channel isn't in the business of telling you remote work is a magic trick. Marcus's path only works if he actually invests the difference instead of spending it. Plenty of remote workers pocket the extra free time and the lower cost of living and simply absorb it into a slightly nicer lifestyle, which erases the entire advantage. Remote work also carries its own real risks. Promotion ceilings in some companies, harder salary negotiation because remote roles frequently get pegged to lower regional pay bands, and a genuine isolation cost that shows up in career mentorship and even mental health for people who need in-person structure. And Derek's higher base salary compounds every future raise, since most raises are percentage-based. A $72,000 base with a 4% raise is worth more in dollar terms than a $58,000 base with the same percentage raise, a gap that widens every single year. Derek stays employed there, so the lesson isn't remote wins or in-office wins. It's that almost nobody runs this math before choosing, and the salary line on the offer letter is never the real number. If you're actually facing a version of this decision, do 3 things this week. First, calculate your real one-way commute distance and multiply your round-trip daily mileage by 68 cents. Then, by your actual working days a year. That's your honest annual commuting cost, not a guess. Second, take whatever salary gap sits between 2 offers and subtract that commuting number. If what's left is under roughly $5,000, weight the decision much more heavily toward the flexible option because the math genuinely favors it more often than people assume. Third, if you take the higher-paying in-office role, treat your commuting cost like a bill you're already paying and consciously invest the equivalent of what a remote counterpart would be saving. Don't let the premium quietly evaporate into a nicer car and a longer drive. The real difference between Marcus and Derek was never their paycheck. It was what each of them decided to do with the hours and dollars nobody was tracking. So the question worth sitting with isn't which offer sounds better on the day you sign it. It's this: if you took your actual commute this year and multiplied it out in time and money, would you still take the job you're in right now?